Hey guys, welcome back. So today I brought home this 5500 watt Ryobi generator. This one was a Craigslist find for only $50. And according to the listing, the engine runs and the generator makes power, but there's a problem. This generator is only producing 120 volts and no longer makes 240. So either the stator is bad or maybe there's a wiring issue. I'm not sure which, but that's what we're going to find out. As far as the engine goes, I'm told it runs. It has compression, but I was not able to start it when purchasing this generator. So there's definitely issues there. I'm sure they're fuel related. The airbox cover is missing as well as the filter, and the recoil has some issues as well. So let me get you set up a little bit better. I want to start by looking at the electrical to see what we're dealing with. I'm going to use the 240 volt outlet for this test because both leg 1 and leg 2 are located right here, and it's pretty easy to identify them. The ground is the one that has this 90-degree bend, and opposite you have the neutral, and then leg 1 and leg 2. You want to put one probe in the neutral and the other on leg 1. And in this case, I have 0.4 ohms, 0.3, 0.4. And that's a good reading. Usually I see between 0.3 and 0.5 ohms on a generator like this. Let's check leg 2. Point 4, 0.3. So that's good. Leg 1 and leg 2, both between 0.3 and 0.4 ohms. So there's no red flag here. I mean, from this test, it actually looks like the 240 volt outlet should work. But to be sure, we really want to test the quality of the insulation. And in order to do that with this multimeter, you really have to go down to the power head and isolate the coils. And then you can test them all individually and make sure nothing is connected to ground or to adjacent coils. So I'm going to pull the end cover off the power head and we'll do some more tests down there. This stator looks brand new. The copper color is good, the lacing is intact, none of it's broken, and there's no evidence of overheating or anything burning. So visually, there's no red flags here. This stator only has 3 wires coming out of it. We have 1 white and 2 black. Some have 4, but in this case, they've actually doubled up on the neutral, so there's no way to isolate leg 1 from leg 2, so we can't check for an insulation failure between those 2 main coils, but we can still check for a failure to ground. First, we have to isolate it from ground, and you'll notice this neutral has a jumper that connects over to ground, so we need to break that connection and then just test from any one of these to ground and make sure there is no connection there. I'm going to attach one lead to ground and another to leg 1 and leg 2. And we get nothing. So there's a whole lot of nothing going on here. I'm starting to wonder if this generator actually does make 240 volts. So I'm just going to reconnect this wire, resecure the AVR. We'll get it outside like this, see if I can't get it started and test the output. All right, let's see if I can get this engine going. But first, take a quick peek at the oil. Plenty of oil. Does need to be changed, but we'll make it earn its change. All right, and I got nothing from that engine. So either there's no spark or maybe that cord is too short. But I actually think I missed something here. This is an on-off switch as well as a choke and a fuel valve. It does everything in one, makes it easy to start. But there's also a switch on the side, which is set to off. You know why there's two ignition switches? I don't know. But if either one of those is off, it's not going to start. So let's try it again. Well, what can I say? This might be a quick video. All the outlets work, even the 240 volt outlet. I got 236 volts. So as far as I can tell, there is no problem with the power head. And the engine, not too bad either. Now that both ignition switches are set to on, it started first pull and sounded pretty good. Not perfect, so it does need a little bit of work, but all things considered, I think things are going pretty well. So let's get this back inside. We'll make everything right and bring it back out for a load test. It didn't take long for this one to earn its oil change. I'm going to start with the recoil. There's nothing actually wrong with it other than there's not enough spring tension to pull the cord all the way in. And the cord's really short. If I pull this out, this reel is only going to rotate once, twice, and that's it. You know, this should be able to hold 5 or 6 turns of cord. So I'm just going to cut this out and put some new stuff in. that's 4 turns, 5, 6. That should be enough. When putting that recoil on, I noticed a piece of PVC here used as a fuel line, and that is not a good idea. PVC melts at a lower temperature, and the fuel actually makes this line petrified, and this is a petrified line. If I try to bend it, it'll break and the fuel will just spill out. So that has to be replaced. There's another piece up here on the tank vent, so we'll replace that as well. I think the bigger issue here is the tank and the design of the tank. If you look at it, there is a valley going down the center, and the fuel cap is in that valley. So if you leave this generator outside in the rain, that will actually fill up, and the cap will be below the water, and water will go into the tank. I've seen that on a few of these, and this one's no exception. There is rust, and it's not a total loss. This can be cleaned up. You know, I don't think there's any water in there now, but that's definitely an issue. So we'll get the fuel out of the tank. We'll get some Evaporust in there, let it soak for a few days, and deal with those lines. Thankfully, there's not a lot of fuel in there. I think the best way to go about this is to tilt the generator so that the right side is down, and that should bring the fuel away from the fuel outlet. I'll just cut the line there. We'll get a good flexible line on there, drop it into a bottle, and drain that tank. There's a lot more fuel in there than I thought. Anyway, it's not done draining yet. I'm just going to keep going. No water so far, so I don't think there's any issues there. Once all the fuel's out, I'm just going to mop the tank dry the best I can, and then I'll put this Evaporust in it. Let it sit for a few days or a few weeks, however long it takes to get that rust cleaned up. I didn't believe the seller when he said this was 5 years old, but it says right there, June 30th, 2016. So this is actually about 5.5 years old, which I guess makes sense. I mean, it is cleaning up pretty well. There isn't really much aluminum oxide or rust on this machine, just a lot of dirt, and there are some little patches of rust, no doubt from sitting outside for 5 years. It's right at the 24-hour mark, and you can see there is a noticeable improvement in the amount of rust on the bottom of the tank, but it does need some more time, so we'll give it another 24 hours and check back. Well, that tank is soaking. I'm just going to turn my attention to the engine. Although it did start pretty well once that switch was turned on, it didn't sound right. I'm not sure how well that came across in the video, but it almost sounded like the choke was on, like it was running rich. So potentially there is an issue with that carburetor. I am pretty sure the person I bought this from said he had it serviced at one point, most likely after the water got in the tank. So I don't know if that's the original carburetor. Potentially it's jetted wrong. I'm not sure. But before doing that, I think I'm going to check the valves. When pulling the engine over, I noticed when it hits the compression stroke, it pulls through it pretty easily. And that could be a function of the compression release, or it could be a symptom of tight valves, which might cause the engine to sound the same. So let's get the valve cover off. We'll check the clearance and then move on to that carburetor. So I'm just going to rotate the engine until the intake valve is open. And then check the exhaust. And there's absolutely no clearance on that exhaust valve. So that is probably the source of the leak down issue and probably the run issue. Let's advance the engine so that the exhaust is open. And the intake has clearance. So I'll check the clearance on both. The exhaust is definitely an issue. I think I loosened the stud on the rocker, so I'm going to take the rocker off, just make sure that that stud is torqued properly. Ryobi uses a Rato engine, and according to that manual, 6 thousandths on the intake and 8 on the exhaust. Yeah, that's good. It's between a 7 and an 8. So let's check the intake. It's much better compression. Six fits pretty good. And a 5's a little loose. So that's good. I'm just going to rotate the engine, double check the exhaust, double check the intake. But I think we're fine now. Yeah, those are good. That's perfect. There's almost zero leak down at this point. So yeah, that valve, that exhaust valve was definitely an issue. It was letting a lot of compression out. It wasn't letting it all out. That's why this engine could run. But the way that it was, this engine would have been down significantly on horsepower. And I reread the Craigslist description, and I think I misinterpreted what it said. It didn't say that it didn't make 240 volts. It said it could only power 110 volts. So based on what I saw on that valve, I'm guessing what he meant to say was when he put a heavy 240 volt load on the generator, the engine would fall on its face and stall, because the way that that valve was, I don't see that it could have powered a heavy load. Anyway, as far as the carb goes, I think I'm going to leave it alone for now. I want to run it like this with the valve adjusted, but I am going to pull the drain bolt out of the carb. I want to see what comes out and just check the condition of that bolt. If it's rusted or varnished, then I should pull that carb. But if it comes out clean, I will test it like this. Yeah, I should pull that carb. A lot of debris came out, no water, but the bolt also has a bit of rust on it. Yeah, that has to be replaced. That is a gasket that goes on this nut to keep it from leaking. So that is trash. As far as the bowl goes, not too bad. There's some debris, some discoloration, but no rust. So that's good. And inside the carb also looks pretty good. This is the idle set screw. When putting it back together, you don't need to drive it through much. Most generators do not idle. And if you drive it all the way in, it might actually cause the engine to run fast. Really, the only useful thing it's doing here is holding down this pilot jet. And the main jet's in there. Let's see if we can get that out. Nope. Gonna leave that alone. It can still be cleaned. I think the only downside is I can't get to the emulsion tube. But after running it through the ultrasonic, I'll try it again. Maybe it'll decide to come out. And this carb does have an adjustable jet. Looks like someone broke it off. So hopefully it's in a good spot. Nope. Gonna try to steal that seal from this bowl nut. Or actually the whole thing. But they are different. This one has a hole through the center, and some pickups on the side. So I do need to stick with this, but hopefully I can steal this washer off of here, and it's most likely the same size. Without ripping it. There we go. Make sure that seat's in there. There is a rubber O-ring on that jet. And sometimes this jet doesn't pop all the way down. And if it's not all the way down, it's going to suck a lot of air. It'll be a vacuum leak and it's not going to run very well. Gonna put the brakes on that carb installation. I don't have enough new fuel line to replace the old ones, and they really all need to be replaced. They're not in very good shape. Unfortunately, it's too late to do that tonight, so I'll have to hold off for the morning, which is fine. That Evaporust needs more time to work, and the person I bought this from actually reached out to me and said he found the rest of the airbox. So I'm going to pick up the rest of the airbox, pick up the fuel line, and then we can complete the work that's needed down there. And for now, I think the only thing left that I can do is just clean up some of that dirt. courtesy of Amazon. I've got the lines I need to plumb the carburetor and fix this tank vent issue. But first, I'm going to drain that Evaporust. It's actually been in there for a week, and I saw a lot of progress the first 24 to 48 hours, but not so much since. So I think it's done doing what it can, and it did clean up quite a bit from where it was. So I'm going to fish that out, whatever that is, drain the Evaporust, kind of mop up the tank. I might run a little water through it, and I'm going to put gas in it right away. That gas will be a bit contaminated, but I'd rather do that than let it flash rust, and I'll just run the gas through the system, use that to kind of clean up the tank and get the rest of the water and Evaporust out. I double checked on the Evaporust website, and for fuel tanks like this, they say don't use water. Something like acetone or gasoline is recommended. So I'm going to put about half a gallon, maybe a gallon of gas in there, kind of swish it around and just drain it out, and should be good. Evaporust is water-based, and you can see the fuel is hazy, so I'm going to set this aside. I think if I give it some time, that'll come out a solution, and then I can pour off the good gas and reuse it and just recycle what's left. And there's a better look at the end result. Some of you may have noticed I stuck with the paper filter that was on there. This one's new, and my preference on a gravity-based system is to use one like this. It is less restrictive and works better when you have less pressure. This is really meant for a fuel pump type setup, but in this case, I don't have much of a choice. These do not fit the 3/16 line, and usually the only things that use line of this diameter are Honda clones, which this is, and those usually have a filter in the tank, where the fuel petcock screws on, but not this one. This one's a little bit different, so I have to stick with the same style that was on there. Interesting. The tank is actually a 1/4 inch, and the rest of the system is 3/16. So let me grab a 1/4 inch line. It should connect just fine to that fuel filter and convert it down. I stopped by the sellers today and picked up the airbox parts he found, which consists of the cover and the air filter, but I'm still missing the knob to secure the cover, and I believe there should be a metal plate down in there. So I'm going to check my stash and see if I have either of those parts. That might be it. I think that'll do it. Yeah, it just needed a bit of time. That fuel cleared up, and you can just see some Evaporust there on the bottom. I'm going to get the engine started, give it a few minutes to warm up, and once it does, I'm going to apply a load. I've got 4 space heaters hooked up. The 2 on the left are on leg 1, the 2 on the right, leg 2. I'll turn on the space heaters on either end. That'll be 3,000 watts, and if that does fine, I'm going to turn the 2 in the middle each on medium, which will be another 1,000 watts each, bringing this pretty close to the max of 5,500 watts. I forgot the switch on the side. All right, not too bad. The engine started right up and it handled the 5,000 watts without issue, holding at 60 hertz. So I'd say the engine issues are pretty much sorted out, but I'm not completely happy with the voltage. Without a load, it was at 119 volts and loaded to 5,000 watts. It dropped to about 115. So I'm going to bump that voltage up a little bit, the no load voltage, and set it to about 122, 123. And I think that'll solve that issue. It looks like there's a little bit of glue on the potentiometer, so they don't want you adjusting it. But if you scrape that off, there is an adjustment there. And if I give it about a half turn clockwise, it should bring the voltage up a couple volts. All right, let's try it like that. That was better, but not quite as good as I'd like to see. Without a load, it's about 2.5 volts above 120, and under a full load, it's about 3 volts below. So I was kind of aiming for the middle, meaning not too high on one side or the other. And that's pretty much where it's at. So I think I'm going to leave good enough alone. Now, this one definitely was not what I expected. I really thought there was going to be a stator problem, and it turned out it was just valves and a bunch of miscellaneous stuff. So, pretty easy fix. You know, the one good thing I will say about Ryobi is that they support their stuff, and the parts are pretty cheap. So, going into this, I knew a new stator for this only costs $135. And even the tank, as badly designed as it is, they do sell replacement tanks for only $80. And most generators that use clone engines like this, they either don't supply parts or the parts are way too expensive. So, you know, from that point of view, I do recommend Ryobi if you're looking for something affordable that you can get parts for when it eventually breaks. Now, if you want something that's going to last longer, I would recommend a Honda, but for the price, I'd say this generator is one of the best values out there. Anyway, I think I'm done. So I hope this video helps someone. Thanks for watching.